We're going to just back up a little bit. I know you couldn't hear. Because this is my first sermon at this congregation, I want to read a little disclaimer. My goal is to spark an ongoing conversation about much needed change. Change within our faith, change within our congregation, change within society, but mostly change in ourselves. I understand no one likes change all that much, but I will be discussing change. Please, 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 be prepared to listen with open ears, to try to keep an open heart and mind, and to take notes so that we can continue this conversation beyond today, so that we can discuss our different points of views. Let's change for the better together. Try not to treat this conversation with hypersensitivity. I'm speaking to you, but not about you. Have compassion for me, because I might just be an idiot myself. And that's fine with me, so long as I don't stay an idiot, I'll be okay. In so many ways, I feel like my people have been ignorant. We have been tricked, bamboozled, scammed, and downright robbed out of our opportunities for over 400 years. We have been convinced to support organizations that seem to support us but don't. We have promoted rhetoric that will directly negatively affect us in long term, but we are only looking at the now. Yet finally, after all these years of seeming like idiots, instead of being judged by our ignorant decisions, the world has finally gave us some compassion. This is so very important because people listen a lot better when they are being compassionate. If no one ever gets the chance to say thank you, I will say thank you. Thank you, world, for the love and the work and the support through these trying times. Thank you for doing something, no matter how big or how small. Thank you for drawing the line here and helping now as we move forward into change together. Yes, world. Al Sharpton said this movement is bigger than Martin Luther King Jr. And I said, hold up now. Al, he be getting out of hand sometimes, but in thinking about it more closely, I think he's right. I think he's right. Even Martin didn't have other countries involved on this level. And no matter the outcome, I'm proud we've become united in this way. What fools we all are. That poem about the penny I first read about 10 years ago. It was featured in a book called Think and Grow Rich and became one of my favorites instantly. I guess I enjoy the accountability and you getting what you want. You asked for it. That way, if you come up short, it's on you. I was a unique kind of idiot. I asked for the right wage, but the wrong job, so you got to have compassion for me. But can you imagine that? Us not having what we want or need because we didn't ask? Maybe we didn't know what to ask for, or that asking would make a real difference for us. See, when we look at how we can have compassion for idiots, we must first define compassion for this conversation. The definition I will use is from the Greater Good magazine at Berkeley, which says compassion literally means to suffer together. Among emotion researchers, it is defined as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. I won't use the term idiot much in this conversation, but I will be using ignorant, which by definition means lacking knowledge or awareness in general, uneducated or unsophisticated. You may hear me pronounce ignorant as ignorant. This is a humorous slang term that is used in my community, but I wanted to mention this for those who may be unfamiliar. I'm compassionate for a whole plethora of people who lack knowledge and awareness, or in other words, are ignorant. Recently, I have noticed a push in the terms white supremacy, white privilege, white passing, and white power. Mostly, I've heard these terms from the white community. Each of these terms are discussed in my African American community, but not as often. As the race at the bottom of the power structure, we are aware of these terms, but we've created pathways to continue moving forward without really focusing on them. Yet, ironically enough, I have witnessed white Americans apologizing for having white privilege a lot lately. In 30 years, this had never happened to me. Confused, I remained silent about this because I was trying to learn more about why white privilege was such a big deal in the white community and not in my community, which is the community that's oppressed by the white community. As I learned and listened, I discovered that many white Americans, especially in Unitarian Universalism, feel a certain level of guilt and shame for being white and therefore having white privilege. The UU community has created a normality in apologizing for being white to people who are not white. But I gotta tell you something. It's not a big deal. So you're white, and last I checked, we didn't have a say in what race we were born into. Now, by all means, if you're apologizing for being white makes someone feel better, then please continue apologizing. But do this with compassion. Get to know a person and suffer together with them and figure out if they need or want you apologizing for being white. Don't do it to make yourself feel better and remain ignorant to people of color and their feelings. Understand that some people of color appreciate your white privilege more than you can ever imagine, because you are using it to assist us in advancing our culture, because we need white allies to lobby and pass legislation, because we need white passing people of color to make it to high-ranking positions so that when they affect change, they can pull us up and those of us who can't pass still get an opportunity. Understand that the white privilege and power in passing to some people of color only becomes an issue when you are not using it to help others. And this is the true root of the negative surrounding feelings that circle these terms, not the terms themselves. This is a lesson on the golden rule. We all were taught the golden rule as children. You know, treat each other like you want to be treated. But this is wrong. It's been wrong. It was wrong when you learned it back then, and it's still wrong today. Stop treating other folks how you want to be treated, idiot. They ain't you. Be compassionate, suffer together with them, gain understanding on how they like being treated, and then treat them according to that. This is the platinum rule, treating others how they would like to be treated. So how do you become more compassionate? Coretta Scott King said the greatest of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. I know. So in order to become more compassionate, we must donate money, right? Well, no. Money is helpful, yes. We need money to uplift minority communities, yes. But long before you ever write a check, you must be compassionate. You must suffer together. That means you're not going to be able to be disconnected to the community you want to help. The community you want to help is going to become your community. These minority people will become your co-workers, your congregants, your friends, and in time, you will understand who they are, what their plight was, and what resources can best be used to impact their community. But you need them. You can't skip the work and getting them and think you're still benefiting their community. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It understands that an edifice that produces beggars need restructuring. The money band-aid won't work. And in addition, won't change much because we all know about this thing called the racial wealth gap, right? Well, see, in 1970, we see income levels stagnated for lower and middle class households, while ironically it continued to grow for households at the top of the spectrum. According to the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity at Duke University, wealth begets more wealth. Higher levels of wealth enable greater access to more favorable terms for credit. Wealth provides individuals and families and financial agency and choice. It provides economic security to take risks and shields against risk of economic loss. Basically, what I'm telling you is wealth is cumulative. It provides people with the necessary capital to secure finance and purchase an appreciating asset, which in turn will generate more wealth. Literally, it takes wealth to make wealth. While blacks and other people of color have largely been excluded from intergenerational access to capital and finance, see, this may seem like a money talk, but I ain't talking about money. I'm talking about centuries of racism and discrimination that has made this gap wider and wider and wider for black households and other people of color that have been denied access to opportunities and resources available to white households, but not to them. The Brookings Institution points out that the ratio of white family wealth to black family wealth is higher today than it was at the beginning of the century. It is my firm belief that if we do not address the racial wealth gap, then in time, we will return to the same outcomes we have had for the last 400 years. Call me an idiot. But before you know what kindness really is, you must lose some things. And I don't see nobody losing nothing. Some people will say that America is the land of opportunity. They won't entertain this ideal of a racial wealth gap. They won't entertain the ideal that society is structured against certain people. And they'll harp on this. They'll say that people who are talking about white privilege, that we're harping on this subject. They'll say that we're victimizing our circumstances. They'll say that we need to live with a victory mindset rather than a victim mindset. And some people do. That old scripture that everyone knows says, faith without works is dead, right? But understand that that is only relevant to a small percentage of people of color. A study was done by Social Equity at Duke, and they found the following. Blacks cannot close the racial wealth gap by changing their individual behavior, i.e., by assuming more personal responsibility or acquiring the portfolio management insights associated with financial literacy. If the structural sources of racial inequality remain unchanged, there will be no actions that Black Americans can take unilaterally that will have much of an effect on reducing the racial wealth gap. For the gap to be closed, America must undergo a vast social transformation produced by the adoption of bold national policies that will forge a way forward by addressing, finally, the long-standing consequences of slavery, the Jim Crow years that followed, and ongoing racism and discrimination that existed in our society today. If you still don't believe me here, I could tell you some numbers. 17,150. That's the median net worth of a black household in 2016, according to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances. The median net worth of a white family in the same year was $171,000, nearly 10 times as much. 40%. That's how much less likely black families are to own their own homes than white families. 28%. That's the portion of black homeowners who didn't pay or defer their mortgage payments in May during the depths of the COVID-19 crisis, compared to just 9% for white homeowners. 2 out of 5. That's the share of black small businesses that were forced to close down in April because of the pandemic. So that donation sensation, You see, now it's just not going to do what we need it to do long term. Not to affect change. It makes you feel good, but it helps us remain the same. One way we could become more compassionate is by learning to be vulnerable. Rather than fearful of change, we have to focus on being honest and transparent. Here's a short video on vulnerability and how we can use it to connect more. We have to be able to say, I'm ignorant because I lack knowledge or awareness in general. I'm uneducated or unsophisticated on this topic, and I need to consult someone from this community who has more knowledge than me. I need to get to know this community. And in time, as I become more compassionate and suffer with this community, I will be better equipped to help this community through more efficient and effective means. But as mentioned in the video, this won't be easy. Some people will be fearful, some will take longer than others, but we all are dealing with a lot right now. We all are suffering. We all need each other. We all need to be connected. Now we know what compassion is. We know how to use it, but we still need a plan of action. I know you may be thinking of helping people of color and indigenous backgrounds as an impossible feat. You may think, how, after all these years, how can we possibly come up with something to change these segments of society? Well, my ignorant friends, the same way we did it before, with money, education, and guidance. The same way we changed animal rights. The same way LGBTQ+ became what it is today. The same ways that Jews and Japanese received reparations and organized and created a protected class for themselves. It's the same work. It's just for a different segment of people. See, sometimes when things are out of sight, they're out of mind. When we don't have to see injustice or hear about it because our congregation has the same type of people, we become isolated. We begin to live in a bubble and not even realize it. We begin to say we believe in justice, equality, and compassion in human relations, but all the humans we're relating to look and act and talk and walk and live like we do. Malcolm X said, don't be in a hurry to condemn because he doesn't do what you do, or think as you think, or as fast. There was a time when you didn't know what you know today. See, I was ignorant to the fact that being black would be a life sentence, that racism would be forever present, and that no matter if the scientists are right or not, and we all merge back into one race, that blacks will then go from being segregated based on looks to now being segregated based on class. And because we ain't got no money. Let me read my disclaimer again, because somebody at home is shouting in a good way and somebody at home is shouting in a bad way, and I just need us to all be on the same page. So I'm gonna just reread this. Because this is my first sermon at this congregation, I want to read a disclaimer. My goal is to spark an ongoing conversation about much needed change. Change within our faith, change within our congregation, change within society, but mostly change in ourselves. I understand no one likes change all that much, but I will be discussing change. Please be prepared to listen with open ears, to try and keep an open mind and heart, and to take notes so that we can continue the conversation beyond today, so that we can discuss our different points of views, and so that we can change for the better together. Try not to treat this conversation with hypersensitivity. I am not speaking to you. I am speaking to you, but not about you. Have compassion, because I might just be an idiot myself. And that's fine with me so long as I don't stay an idiot. I'll be okay. See, we must be compassionate, guys. We must meet people where they are suffering and be vulnerable. Let's start today. Forget anything that's happened here before now. Today we start anew. As the sparkling, sun-shining, all-inclusive, everyone is welcome, UU Miami. Today we vow to live out our principles and start with our congregation first. If you don't suffer fools gladly, you're probably not the most patient when dealing with someone who you think is stupid. You probably would not have compassion for the idiot. We would probably be friends. We are nothing like Mr. T. We don't pity the fool. So this work right here, this change right here, this new journey, it's going to be hard. It's going to challenge us. It's going to make us uncomfortable. I understand. But it is what we must do. We know that hindsight is 20/20. We can look back at our past decisions both personally and professionally and see so clearly where we went wrong. But if we don't use that knowledge to move forward and do ourselves if we don't use that knowledge to move forward, we do ourselves a disservice. Consider this. Maybe, with it being the year 2020, maybe it is now the time for us to do as Wayne Dyer said. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. What can we start looking at differently? I know everyone's on the chat right now. Answered that question. Put in some different ideas. Let's continue this conversation beyond today. What can we start looking at differently? I know this was a lot to take in. I know there may be feelings of being overwhelmed or helpless, but there are so many things that we have control of that we can do. Don't allow this information to weigh you down. Don't allow it to weigh us down. Let it build us up and equip us for battles, my friend. As we progress through this week into Juneteenth, this Friday, I encourage each of you to support a minority business in some way. Open up a bank account at a black bank. We have one here in Miami. Gather friends together and eat outside on one of these beautiful Miami terraces that are owned by a person of color. Anything, something. Let's support these segments of community that have been unsupported this long. This change is not out of our reach, but we must sacrifice what we have and intentionally reach for it if we truly want it. As we come to a close, I will share this quote with you by James Baldwin. I am what time, circumstance, history have made of me, certainly. But I am also so much more than that. So are we all. Blessings.